Good morning, everyone. My name is Carolyn Hart Bennett, and today I'm going to read Chapter 2 from my second book, Seven Sisters, Overland. The day wore on, and so did the heat, which became oppressive. Everyone on the deck fanned themselves. The men rolled up their sleeves, and the women daringly inched up their skirts to their mid-calves to allow passing breezes to reach their ankles. Many took afternoon naps with wet handkerchiefs draped over their faces. Whistle blasts from passing steamers or working boats punctuating the purring of the side wheels, but most of the saints were dreaming of Zion ahead. Late in the afternoon, the bell clanged a pattern signal. The crew responded, and the St. John sidled up to the Albany wharf. The saints gathered up their handheld luggage and their children and moved to the railing to get a better look at the city of Albany. There appeared to be a throng of inquisitive spectators below the steamer, including a score of ladies carrying covered baskets, a few city officials, 3 ministers, and a couple of newspaper reporters. Remarkably, there were no children among the adults. The saints studied the faces of the crowd to see if they were friendly or not. Everyone seemed to know about or had heard of the Mormons. It was the latest religious sect to draw ire and mocking from evangelical congregations in the region. The saints became disheartened when they saw the forced smiles on the pinched faces of the women. The men were suspiciously agitated as they shifted from one foot to the other and whispered asides to each other. The cabin passengers were the first to leave the steamer and were greeted with welcomes and directions by the Albany Day Line employees to help them find their waiting loved ones or their next mode of transportation. After they left, the saints noticed that none of the original gathered crowd dispersed as expected. They stood resolutely at the base of the gangway. President Tippett felt something wasn't quite right. He could sense he was about to face his first test as the president of the company. He longed for the leadership and common sense of President Bramble, who had a rather confident way of dealing with unpleasant situations during their Atlantic crossing. Just before it was time for the saints to disembark, President Tippett turned to the saints and quietly told the ones closest to him, "We may have a thorny situation here, brothers and sisters. Please be calm and respectful as I try to deal with it." The saints in the front quietly relayed the message back to the rest of the company as President Tippett pulled down his waistcoat, smoothed his coat, and turned around slowly. Then he took his first step. When he took his first step down the gangway, the crowd burst into energetic singing. "Only a sinner saved by grace, only a sinner saved by grace. This is my story, to God be the glory. I'm only a sinner saved by grace." President Tippett smiled with nervous bravado, and when he was sure they were finished singing, he did what he thought President Bramble would do. He started clapping. He was soon politely joined by the rest of the saints. "Citizens of Albany," he said, thank you for this wonderful, warm welcome." One woman in the front boldly stepped forward and began to speak. "We are a delegation from the Ladies' Tract Society of Albany. We are petitioning for the privilege of distributing New Testaments and tracts to the heads of each of your families for the purpose of," she took a deep breath and barged on, "enlightening your benighted Mormons." Then, as an afterthought, she added, "We also have oranges for the children." As she said this, several women uncovered baskets of testaments and tracts, and others revealed the oranges. President Tippett froze momentarily until an ingenious idea entered his head. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am deeply appreciative of your charity toward my company of Latter-day Saints, and you are perfectly at liberty to say or introduce anything you please to any or all of them." The saints' mouths dropped open. "And may I say, if you can lure or decoy any of them away from Mormonism, I will most graciously thank you for it and be glad to be rid of them." The saint suddenly understood his motives as the spectators sounded a collective gasp of disbelief. Now, I have one more thing to say before we come ashore. If you will please announce to your absent society members that I, John Harvey Tippett, the president of this fine company of Mormon saints, will be giving a representation of ourselves in a sermon tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. on this very wharf. And all are invited to attend and find out for themselves what Mormonism is all about. A low murmur began in the crowd and advanced into chattering when the saints started down the gangway and finally arrived on the wharf. The so-called welcoming committee began distributing their tracts and testaments, and the children eagerly surrounded the women with baskets of oranges and politely waited for the fruit to be plopped into their outstretched hands. Before each orange landed, the ladies would make a comment. You must be born again. Sinners cannot enter heaven. Mormons are not Christians. The children hardly listened to the statements as they anticipated the juicy taste of the colorful fruit. They gratefully offered a simple thank you and ran to find their guardians, who were also collecting gifts from the society. The reporters began bombarding all the saints they could corner with questions about England. Why would you ever leave your homeland for this absurd religion founded by a hallucinating 14-year-old boy? The ministers spouted diatribes against Mormonism and told the saints they were on the road to hell if they didn't repent and denounce their religion. Most of the saints didn't engage in debate with their religious greeters, but some bore simple testimonies that they were very happy with their church and knew it had true principles. The greeters weren't convinced. The saints smiled and nodded politely as they moved past them. It only took a few more minutes for everything to be passed out and for the reporters to run out of questions. At last, the saints were left alone and could move to the campground provided for travelers of the day line. The passengers of means could always venture into Albany and seek lodging there, but the passengers tried to travel economically and were grateful for the camping places along their route, which helped them save money. President Pinkerton stepped up on a raised platform built specifically for announcement givers. Brothers and sisters, this is where we will be spending the night, so spread out and settle your families where you can. We will send the missionaries into the nearby streets to purchase bread. Please do not draw attention to yourselves, elders. We have about an hour and a half before our prayer meeting starts, so try to be back in time. The saints went to work making the area their own. There were only 4 non-member families who were taking advantage of the camping grounds, but they kept their distance from the saints and cautioned their children to stay close by. They weren't sure how dangerous the Mormons really were. They had only heard bad things about them. Their menfolk would be watching closely. Once again, the luggage captains worked tirelessly, unloading the tons of baggage from the steamer onto several wagons the Hudson Day Line provided for them. They planned to transport it all to the train depot a half-mile away. During all this activity, Eleanor excused herself from her sisters to walk among the families and talk to the mothers about their families' health concerns. Sister Wise, might I have a moment of your time, said President Tippett, calling her aside and leading her to the edge of the camping area. Since the Amazon Saints have been split in half, we need to assess which health committee members are still in our midst. We can't have you taking the whole responsibility of the company's health by yourself. There are only Brother Brown and myself left, said Eleanor. That will never do, Sister Wise. If you'll give me the names of 2 more sisters you can recommend, I'll have Brother Brown suggest 2 more brothers, and I'll take care of that tomorrow morning. She didn't have to think long. My sisters, Lavinia and Caroline, proved exceptionally valuable during Titus's recovery. I think they would be willing to assist me. Good. I'll call them tomorrow. And another thing, Sister Wise, when do you think Sister Polson will deliver her baby? If she travels without too much jostling, she might make it to Florence, but it's hard to tell. I'm watching her closely. I'm more worried about her state of mind after losing her husband than I am about the baby. But Sister Clotworthy seems to have gravitated to her, and hopefully they will become better friends and be able to comfort each other in their losses. That is wonderful. Any other concerns? Everyone seems healthy at the moment. There have been rumors of cholera outbreaks here and there along the Overland route. I've been instructing everyone to be diligent about drinking clean water, said Eleanor. Just know you can come to me with any problems you might have, he said. I appreciate that, President Tippett. He laughed. Being the president of this company is a whole lot different from being the president of the 8th Ward on the Amazon. I feel a tremendous weight added to my shoulders since taking over for President Bramwell. I must say, you handled those Albanians with perfect ease today. Well, he smiled, we'll see what happens tomorrow morning. Never fear, President. The Lord will direct you. I hope so, he said, adding a self-doubting chuckle as he walked away. Now that Phoebe and Fanny were off the steamer, they felt like they had been let out of confinement. They wanted to run, skip, and play with the other children. Phoebe stood on the platform and announced loudly, "Any children who want to play a game until supper time, follow Fanny and me to that bare space over there." The two started running toward the vacant lot, and like burrs collecting on the bottom of their skirts, several children joined them. The grown-ups loved seeing the children happy and playing games again. It helped keep them from becoming too restless. The Gentile children, however, looked extremely unhappy, some in tears when their parents wouldn't let them accept the invitation to play. When the children arrived at the field, Phoebe and Fanny were thrilled to have their usual gang of players show up, plus 2 new ones, Otto Adams and his little sister Annie, who had joined their company at Castle Garden. Otto looked nothing like an average 14-year-old. Matthew Geddes, who was the twins' constant playmate on the Amazon, was also 14, but he was head and shoulders shorter than Otto. "How tall are you anyway?" asked Matthew, looking up at him. "About this tall," said Otto, putting his hand on top of his head. The children giggled. He was taller than any man in the company by quite a ways. "And you're only 14 years old?" asked Fanny. "Just turned last month." "Well, I'm picking first, and I pick you, Otto," said Phoebe. "That's not fair," said Fanny, giving her a look of disgust. "Oh, well, I guess I'll pick Matthew." "Hey, I might not be as tall as Otto, but I'll bet I'm faster," he said, trying to gain back some importance in the eyes of the twins. The rest of the team members were quickly chosen. "What do you want to play?" Phoebe asked the groups. A few games were shouted out, and then Otto spoke up. "I know a game. It's called Steal the Sticks." "How do you play it?" "There is a center line like this," he said, dragging his foot across the dirt. "And each of the teams is safe on their side of this line. And each team has 10 sticks that are placed about 30 feet away from the center line, behind another line, which is their goal line on each end." Otto stepped off 10 paces from the center in each direction and drew lines on both ends of the field. "Now, you kids need to find some sticks." "What are you talking about? Kids? Goats? Are there goats in this game?" asked Fanny. "No," laughed Otto. "That's what we call children in America." "Children are kids?" "Sure, it's easier to say," said Annie. I like it," said Phoebe. "All you kids get finding some sticks." "Yes, kids, let's get some sticks," said Matthew, trying to fit in. He was getting very enthused about the prospects of the game. The children squealed and dashed around. Some sticks were too short, but before long each team had 10 nice foot-long sticks. Now, the idea is for each team to try to run down to the other's team's sticks, and steal them one at a time. If you make it there, you get a free walk back to your side. If you get tagged on your way there, you have to go behind the line where the sticks are, and you are then in jail until someone comes and touches your hand to free you. Get it? "We get it," they all shouted. The teams faced each other across the center line, and Otto yelled, "Ready? Go!" The team members began venturing across the line, only to dart back when they thought they might get touched. This back and forth went on for a while until Otto acted like he was going to go to the right, but went left instead and started penetrating enemy territory. He was surprisingly nimble and dodged his opponents as he bounded down the field like a gigantic sandhill crane trying to take off flying. Matthew was soon at his heels, but Otto left him behind as he dove for the sticks. Retrieving one of the valuable prizes, he pulled his gangly body up and whooped and hollered as he held the stick high and walked triumphantly back to his cheering team. He may have looked like an adult, but he was really just one of the kids. The next hour flew by as the children raced back and forth, trying to get all their enemies' sticks for their side. Periodically, of course, they had to set their captured teammates free when they ended up behind the enemy lines. Otto's team won handily. The children had a new playmate hero to look up to. After eating their meager supper of bread and cheese brought back by the missionaries, the saints were summoned to a prayer meeting by Matthew, who was still the captain's trumpeter. He was stewing a little because of being trounced by Otto's team. At least he knew he could play the trumpet better than Otto. Maybe. The prayer meeting soon began with George leading the saints in one of their favorite hymns. Have I done any good in the world today? Have I helped anyone in need? Have I cheered up the sad and made someone feel glad? If not, I have failed indeed. It felt so good to sing with full volume. The children especially enjoyed the chorus and sang loudly. Then wake, then failed indeed. Then wake up and do something more than dream of your mansions above. Doing good is a pleasure, a joy beyond measure, a blessing of duty and love. Sorry, I can't sing better. The Gentile parents within earshot marveled at the gusto of the singing children, and after observing them all afternoon, they were starting to think someone had given them wrong information about Mormons. Brothers and sisters, began President Tippett, tomorrow morning we will have our prayer meeting at 8:30, and if any of the townspeople show up at 9 o'clock, I will give them an explanation of the truths of the gospel. I don't know what to expect, 1 or 100, but let us show them by our example that we are a God-loving and God-fearing people. President Larkin, please instruct your guards to be ready to handle any problems that might arise. Now, we couldn't have asked for a lovelier evening to spend our first night under the stars. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling like a little music and dancing. The saints spontaneously cheered and clapped, and the children jumped up and down with eagerness. Well, if you don't want to, President Tippett said dryly. The children and young people responded frantically, yes, we want to. All right, then. I think we still have a few musicians left among us. Let us move to the field where the children were playing this afternoon. Bouncy music was soon played by about half the Cardiff band, whose other half was no doubt entertaining the saints from the Mary Powell somewhere else in the same manner. President Pinkerton, I think it would be neighborly if we invited our Gentile traveling companions to join in our dance, said President Tippett. Would you take on that assignment? Yes, gladly, he said as he walked briskly over to the 4 camping families and broached the question. 3 families were cold and rejected his invitation, but 1 succumbed to the pleas of their children. Please, Papa, please, the children entreated. Their parents must have been feeling badly that they hadn't let their children play with the Mormon children earlier that day. Their children's begging paid off this time. They would let them join in with what looked like good, wholesome fun. President Pinkerton led them back to join with the saints, who befriended them immediately. Almost everyone joined in the dancing, and those who didn't kept time clapping on the sidelines. Sister Triplet, I believe this dance was made just for you, said George as he walked up to Lavinia. What do you mean? She questioned. It has lots of triplets in it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh, Brother Careless, you are always thinking about music. Yes, I am, Sister Triplet. Shall we trip to the triplets? I hope I haven't forgotten how, she said, flushing a little as they took a dancing position. Right off, they bumped knees and had to stop and laugh at their awkwardness. But soon they were in the middle of all the other couples and keeping up with them as well. Susanna was hoping the baggage handlers would get back from the train depot in time for the dance. They had to drive the luggage wagons a short distance to the train depot and seemed to be taking an awfully long time. It was a perfect evening for dancing. The temperature had obliged by dropping a few degrees from the hottest part of the day. No shawls were necessary, as they sometimes were in England, even on a late July evening. Alinda May sat on the sidelines by Jane and Hugh and watched the other saints kick up their heels. Jane enjoyed watching, but declined when Hugh suggested that they dance. She was content to just hold his hand, and nod her head in time to the music. Alinda May even forgot about mourning for her lost husband for the time being as she patted her stomach lightly on the downbeats. But the next minute tears would drip off her chin as she remembered her sorrowful plight. Jane finally noticed Alinda May's wet face in the firelight. "Don't cry, Alinda May. Don't cry," she said, taking her face in her hand and wiping her cheeks with a handkerchief. "You'll be all right. It's good to have someone on the other side of the veil that can look out for you from on high. They can see far more than you can, and they can keep you from danger." Alinda May smiled as though she understood. "Thank you, Sister Clotworthy." "Please call me Jane," she smiled. The dance was just the diversion everyone needed to keep their minds off the minute-to-minute worries of their travels. Seeing that Caroline and Eleanor weren't dancing, President Tippets invited Caroline to dance, and President Pinkerton invited Eleanor to join with the rest of the dancers in the rousing group promenade. Susanna was beginning to feel terribly left out. Even the twins were dancing with the invited children and having a jolly good time, making up awkward steps as they went. They were so energetic. She wondered if they'd get themselves too worked up to go to sleep later on. As the dances continued, she felt more and more sorry for herself. She finally walked away to a tree and leaned against it. She closed her eyes tightly and tried hard not to let any tears seep out. "Sister Watts," called Marcus as he came up behind her. Susanna jumped and gave a little yelp. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. It's just that the music is so loud." "I was wondering if you'd make it back from your luggage duties," she said, gaining composure. "Yes, we got everything loaded on the train. We'll be ready to leave tomorrow morning without delay. I thought I'd have to stay there all night on guard duty, but 2 men volunteered to watch the cars, so here I am." Susanna looked coy. "They just announced there will only be this song and 2 more before we have to turn in for the night. Do you think we'd better take advantage of them?" "Sister Watts, are you asking me to dance with you?" "I'm just saying, Elder Fielding, that time's a-wasting." "Well then, let's not lose any more of it," he said, smiling broadly, and spreading his arms out in a dance position. Susanna stepped inside, and they began laughing and talking as they twirled in the moonlight. They found themselves dancing around the large tree that Susanna had earlier used as a crying post. No one else existed in their eyes fixed on each other, and the music lilted joyfully. One dance turned into 2, and they didn't even notice that they hadn't made it back over to the other dancers. Susanna was enraptured. Eventually, the last dance was over. "Thank you for asking me to dance, Sister Watts," he said playfully. Her face reddened, but hopefully it was too dark to see it. She wondered if he thought she was too forward. "You once said you like a girl who doesn't hold back." Marcus laughed. "Yes, I did, Sister Watts." There was a pause as they fumbled for something to say. "Well, I'd better get back to the twins," she said. "I enjoyed our dances together a great deal," said Marcus, gathering her hands in his. Then he gave them a squeeze, sending a tingle straight to her heart. Susanna closed her eyes in reverie, pursed her lips, and leaned forward. Marcus smiled at her actions, but hesitated. He decided against responding, as much as he wanted to kiss this stunning creature before him. He squeezed her hands again to stir her out of her daze and whispered, "Come on, I'll walk you back." Susanna's eyes flew open, and she tried to recover her dignity. Why, thank you, Elder Fielding, she said, dropping her hands and pretending to straighten her skirt. Then she fumbled for his arm, and they walked across the grass to join the others. Everyone agreed they had just experienced the perfect ending to their glorious day of traveling up the Hudson River. The seven sisters moved to their sleeping area on the ground, where they arranged their quilts as they did at Castle Garden, with their heads in the center. For several minutes they laughed and recalled their dance partners, every comment, every move, and the fun they had on their first dance on American soil. Susanna quietly reveled in the magnificent time she had spent with Marcus, even if it had ended somewhat badly. He didn't seem to notice her forward behavior. At least she hoped he hadn't. Finally, settling down a little, all the sisters lay on their backs and looked up at the heavens. There must be a million stars up there, said Eleanor. If crossing Overland and sleeping on the ground every night is as pleasant as this, we are in for a real pleasure trip. Something caught Phoebe's eye. Look at those twinkly stars by that tree branch. This is almost like the night on our voyage, said Fanny, when the wind stopped and we could see stars everywhere, even down in the water. Susanna's mind clicked back to the wondrous stroll she and Marcus had on the Amazon deck. She couldn't decide whether this night or that night was more magical. Those aren't stars, Twinsy, said Lavinia, interrupting Susanna's thoughts. They are fireflies. Fireflies, repeated Alinda May. Remarkable! The sisters laughed with glee. They continued to see fireflies in clusters around bushes, trees, and over the water in the distance. It looked like a fantasy world. The chirping crickets and frogs were mesmerizing. Eventually, sleep came to everyone in the company, except, of course, the guards, who patrolled the perimeter of the campground all night long. It's the end of chapter 2. Over and